give it just a couple more minutes here, and then we will hear it. All right, we're going to start. We should have a couple more people finally here as we're going through this. So we're on week 5. I'm going to put the link here in the chat. I know Zen is streaming on Movie Many, so I think you can copy and paste this if you want for people that think but we really don't have any kind of like reading or anything to do today. So we got 2 videos. One's an interview with David Hilliard. It's about an hour and a half long. And then we have another video, I think it's a little less than an hour long. It's Hasan Shakur, the former Minister of Culture for the New African Black Panther Party. He's reading a book by David Hilliard on the Panther programs, so the survival programs. We're probably not going to be able to get to all of this material today. So I will admit that the David Hilliard interview, he's talking about his book. He's got a room full of people there. He's telling them about the content of what he wrote, and they're asking him questions and these kinds of things. And I will admit it is a little bit kind of boring. There's a lot of content there, but it's not anything you got to really pay attention to it. So to try to kind of prevent everybody's eyes from glossing over a little bit while this is going on, we're going to do the FWAM Shakur one. He's kind of animated, so he'll be able to keep our attention pretty well. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to have a discussion period on Panther programs, so the survival programs, and then we can have a discussion on, the nitty-gritty about Pantherism. And I want to make sure that everybody that attends this class, everybody that sees this class, actually understands what a mass-based organization is. I've had some talks with leadership in the executive committee of the Black Panthers. We think that we like this class, but we think that there should be a little bit of there should be discussion on the basics, preferably beginning of the course. But since we're already in, I may as well do it now. Questions like, why is there a mass-based organization? What's the history around that? Why did parties the world over decide that was the proper tactic? What good does it do for us? These kinds of questions. So, as people who want to join up with the mass base, I think these are things that we need to discuss. They're covered in the UPM manual, but It doesn't go in as much depth as we would like to cover it. So maybe we can even get to some of the history as well. But so that's just what we got today. That's the setup for what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this video now, and if anybody at any point has any questions or anything they'd like to say, just go ahead and unmute yourself and tell me to pause the video, and I will. Then we can answer your questions in real time. So without further ado, I will share my screen. Here we are. Everybody can see this, right? All good? No technical difficulty? I'll take your silence as a yes. All right.
So, about to start reading from this Judy Newton book again. Look how it looks.
Oh, and just for reference, this is week 5. So anybody who's looking for the material, trying to find what we're looking at, go to the week 5 section.
Let's see. Let's go. So I'm about to read from the Huey P. Newton Reader, called Edited. It's edited by Dave Hilliard and Donna Wise. We're going to read something that Huey wrote. It's called Black Capitalism Reanalyzed, June 5th, 1971. So I'm about to start reading here. This is a part of the political education I'm going to start doing more and more. When we out here shutting down the streets, that's one thing. And that's like really 10% of what it means to be about Black liberation. You know, most of the stuff that we do is the stuff that it's not out in the streets shutting it down. It's actually political education is one of the most important things, you know what I mean, in order to empower the people. So,
and I just want to say, to elaborate a little further on Kwame's, what he just said right there, you know, we don't march for marching's sake. It's good to be out in the street and, you know, supporting people, standing up for your rights, you know, to express yourself. That's what it means to engage, you know, engage on the street. That's what it means, you know, to express your freedom. You have the freedom to speak. And so, you know, it's good for us to be out there in support of different causes and things like that. But that's really 10% of what we're asking of people, even in the mass, especially in the mass base, you know, more so even in the party. But, you know, it's good to be out there, but it doesn't solve the problem we face. We can draw attention to those problems in this way, but to solve them, you have to go out and act. And, you know, whether that's, you know, bringing in bottled water to a community that doesn't have clean drinking water, whether that's, you know, welcoming people who don't homes, whether that's, you know, getting clothes for kids or adults, doesn't matter, you know, feeding people through, you know, breakfast programs and, you know, food distributions, these kinds of things. These are the programs that we ask our members to engage in, because that, along with furthering yourself as a, you know, a comrade in the struggle through education, which we are happy to provide, you know, besides the political education and the going out in the street, this is the rest of it. This is the bulk of it. We have to be able to provide programs to people to get them through to the revolution. Because in our current conditions, you know, it's you either spend your money or you die, and a lot of you have money, because that's just the conditions that we live in. That's what capitalism does. It robs them of the value of the enterprise, and the vast majority of it goes to somebody who owns the building that is cut down for like tax, all that, and then you end up with like a 3 to 5%, if that, of the value generated. each day. So, under conditions like that, where you need to get money to survive, clothes, house, all this stuff, it's necessary that we provide these things to the community. But another thing is it frees up some of their time too. Uh, if you don't have to worry so much about paying your rent, if you don't have to worry so much about, trying to source your food for cheap and all that, clothes, whatnot, you have a lot more time to contribute to the community in general. That's another thing we want to try to go here too, because since the late 70s, early 80s, I mean, the cost of living has skyrocketed. People don't have the time to uh, to engage with us as much as we do. We have to be able to emancipate them. We have to give them the ability to engage with us. So this is one of the ways that we can do that.
I want to educate everybody what the original Black Panther Party stood for and how some of this stuff I'm going to read today even applies today. It says, this is dialogue in our community. This is a dialogue in our community, continuing discussion of the new thrust of the Black Panther Party as we begin to carry out the original vision of the party. When we coined the expression, all power to the people, we had in mind emphasizing the word power. For we recognize that the will of to power is the basic drive, but it is incorrect to power over people. We have been subjected to the dehumanizing power of exploitation and racism for hundreds of years, and he has his own will to power also. What we seek, however, is not power over people, but the power to control our own destiny. For us, the true definition of power is not in the terms of how many people you can control. To us, power is, first of all, the ability to define phenomenon, and secondly, the ability to make these phenomena act in a desired manner. People just tuning on. This is I'm reading from the Huey P. Newton Reader.
So, do you guys hear that? Right? So, power primarily is our ability to understand phenomena, and secondarily is our ability to manipulate that phenomena in a desired manner. That is, in essence, um, dialectics, right? When we want to understand natural phenomena and then achieve that understanding, we have far more power than the people who don't understand that phenomenon. And furthermore, if you can use that for a desired goal or whatever, what have you, um, you have far more power than the people who just understand it and the people who don't understand it. So we want to be able to understand social forces in society. Okay, so what drives homelessness, right? What do homeless people want? How can they get those things, right? These are kind of the questions that you should ask yourself when you observe any kind of phenomena happening in the street. And doesn't just apply to society at large. It also applies to natural phenomena, right? The same thing, rather the same principle applies whenever you want to understand, like, say, how an engine works, right? If you understand that an engine loses efficiency for one or another reasons, you can work around that inefficiency, and you can increase the of the engine through a variety of ways. And there are, speaking on engines, there are specific ways to do that. There are invalid ways to do that as well. You don't hit the engine with a sledgehammer, for example. There's we can do this all day when it comes to the wrong thing to do. But there are a set number of right things to do. And the same thing applies with social phenomena.
Edited by David Hilliard and Donna Wise. This is part of the political education I'm going to start doing from now on for the community. And we read from he becomes a hero. Heroes engage in very courageous actions sometimes. They often make great sacrifices, including the supreme sacrifice, but they are still isolated from their courageous actions and higher levels of consciousness. Vanguard, however, will guide the people onto higher levels of consciousness, and that way bring them to the point where they will take sterner actions in their own interests and against those who continue to oppress them.
So I'm going to stop it there too. Part of our duty in general is not just, being out of the street and, going into the community and developing survival programs and these kinds of things. It's not just attending classes put on by, the leaders of the organization or what have you. It is also, each of us needs to be a teacher in our own right. And we don't, it's written here, we're not cultists, right? So we're not despising anybody who doesn't understand, at all, or even, fully, the line of the party, or what a mass-based organization is, or why a survival program is necessary, or why, capitalism is a scourge against the proletariat. We don't need to despise these people for that. We need to be able to show people through our practice, right? Not through proselytizing our understanding of different theories and these kinds of things. We need to be able to show the people through our actions on the street, and not just in these kinds of in the format we're in right now, where we're on Zoom or even in a person class. We need to be able to teach people through observation and participation on the street. Not just that, being able to have the discussions with those people, right? Don't villainize people just because they're not at your level of understanding. And as was said here, I mean, there's a difference between somebody who is a revolutionary and somebody who's a hero, right? A hero is going to engage in isolated acts of, solidarity or and it's disconnected from their community in that way. We're from our communities, right? We want to engage the people in those communities in this work, right? If you develop a survival program, the goal should be that at some point, if something were to happen to you or your cadre, that would continue. And the reason why that's a goal is because that means that you have engaged with the community, you have involved them, and they have learned through observation and participation. So this is to speak against it's kind of hero culture and revolution.
Let me give an example here. I went up to Auburn prison today to visit a prisoner, and across the street from the prison was a mobile home on a vacant lot that was assigned visitor center at a Black Panther. And I had some little time, before the visit, and they were serving coffee. They had a daycare center inside for children, and so forth. And I talked to the organizers there. That had been created by the Black Panther Party back in the 60s, and was still running by the community as a way to assist people coming to the prison to visit their loved ones. And the women that were running the center were, older Black women who, had gotten involved with the program when the Panther Party was around, and they took it over and kept it running. And I think that's an example of what David's talking about here with playing a vanguard role. In contrast to that, we have a group like the Weathermen, who are composed mostly of rich college kids who weren't integrated in any kind of working class or oppressed community, blowing up bathrooms and universities and stuff, play the role of revolutionary hero that really did nothing for the people.
That's part of the goal here, because we're trying to power to the people, right? Well, in our current circumstances, the people really don't have as much power as we'd like at all, really. What institutions do they have that are completely funded by them, completely run by them? They don't have very much. But in the example that Tom has given, the Weathermen didn't provide anything like that. We have no tangible legacy today. They have a legacy, but it's a historical one, right? They don't have a practical legacy. There's nothing on the ground that's going on as a result of them blowing buildings up. In contrast, the Panthers, there are many different programs that are still operational today that are still being run by the community. And the reason why they're still run by the community is because of the fact that the Panthers engaged with that community. And they had roots in those communities in ways that these students did not have. Students were buying themselves to those communities. They were looked at like they were terrorists. They were a menace. Everybody would be afraid to be in this part of a building at some time, or because they could be blown up. Whereas the Panthers, you're more likely to be fed a meal than you were to be blown up. So that's the kind of thing that we need to look for when we organize. We need to remember that anything that we're doing needs to be concrete and solid enough that it will outlive us. That should be your goal when organizing.
I said previously, revolution is a process, not a conclusion. A true revolutionist will not only take courageous actions, he will also try to advance the people in such a manner that they will transform situations. That is, by delivering power to the people, the true revolutionists will help them define the social phenomena in their community and lead them to the point where they will seize the time and make these phenomena act in a desired manner. So the people just jumping on, I read from Huey P. Newton Reader. It's edited by David Hilliard and Donna Wise. And I'm reading something Huey wrote June 5th, 1971, titled Black Capitalism Reanalyzed. He said, therefore, as revolutionaries, we must recognize the difference between what the people can do and what they will do. They can do anything they desire to do, but they will take those actions which are consistent with their level of consciousness and their understanding of the situation. When we raise their consciousness, they will understand even more fully what they in fact can do, and they will move on the situation in a courageous manner. This is merging your theory with your practice. Point 3 of the original 10-point program of the Black Panther Party is we want to end to robbery by the capitalists of our Black community. That was our position in October 1960, and it is still our position. We recognize that capitalism is no solution to the problems we face in our community. Capitalist exploitation is one of the basic causes of our problems. It is the goal of the Black Panther Party to negate capitalism in our communities and in oppressed communities throughout the world. However, many people have offered the community Black capitalism as a solution to our problems. We recognize that people in the Black community have no general dislike for the concept of Black capitalism, but this is not because they are in love with capitalism, not at all. The idea of Black capitalism has come to mean to many people Black control of another one of the institutions in the community. We see within this characteristic the seeds of negation of Black capitalism and all capitalism in general. What we must do then is increase the positive qualities until they dominate the negative and therefore transform the situation. In the past, the Black Panther Party took a counter-revolutionary position with our blanket condemnation of Black capitalism. Our strategy should have been to analyze the positive and negative qualities of this phenomenon before making any condemnations. Even though we recognize and correctly do so that capitalism is no solution or answer, we did not make a truly dialectical analysis of the situation. We recognize that in order to bring the people to the level of consciousness where they will seize the time, it would be necessary to serve their interests in survival by developing programs which would help them to meet their daily needs. For a long time, we have had such programs not only for survival, but for organizational purposes. Now, not only have now we not only have a breakfast program for school children, we have clothing program, we have health clinics which provide free medical dental services. We have programs for prisoners and their families. We are opening clothing and shoe factories to provide for more of the needs of the community. Most recently, we have begun a testing and research program on sickle cell anemia, and we know that 98% of the victims of this disease are black. To fail to combat this disease is to submit to genocide. Battle is survival. Again, anybody that's jumping out right now, I'm reading from this book right here, The Huey.
So, so there was something in here that I think it was a great example of use of dialectics. When analyzing a phenomenon, we have to and recognizing that just because a community doesn't support, for example, or I'm sorry, just because a community is like say under capitalism, that doesn't mean that they necessarily support. We have to be able to find the positive and negative characteristics within that community in regards to how they're responding to capitalism, for example. And we need to highlight the positive things, and we need to try to do away with the negative things. So we have to, for example, a community might respond to capitalism in the following way. They might join a they might be a laborer or something like that. They might be completely subservient to that system. They might become capitalists. They might aspire to be capitalists. But there are other responses to that system as well. For example, what do we do in the face of people who are starving to death, in the face of widespread homelessness? We go out and we try to propose services to those people. That is one of those things was an example of a negative. The other was an example of a positive. We need to be able to build up the positive responses to such a system. Alan?
Yeah, to that, I was going to say a lot of the aspects into capitalistic systems. If somebody goes in and teaches people how to do co-op within the system, and has all the labor that's there, that can be a positive for the capitalistic system, especially within the black community itself. So, that could be, on the dialectical understanding of that. Though that's not the greatest solution, it is a start to actually dismantling capitalism within itself. Yeah. If you have everybody has a job, cool. Everybody needs to be every job needs to be unionized. Every job that can co-opted together should be co-opted together.
Absolutely.
I'll give you a positive example of how we can unite with certain small business people in the community. You have a store that sells fresh vegetables and fruit. Well, they want to keep the fresh stuff on their shelves. They don't want to have wilted lettuce or soft peppers or whatever on their thing, so they throw them away. And we go and talk to them, get them to donate those things to make soup, and that's what they do in restaurants, make soup out of the vegetables before they, reach the point they had thrown away.
Right, that's an example of negative turning positive.
Right. Or, instead of graffitiing over, the property of the small business man, like we might do with big corporation or thing, we went and asked them if they'll put a poster up in their window. Ask them if they can put our newspapers on their counter and sell them. Involve them in the struggle in a positive way, and give them credit if they donate stuff. And we're handing out food rally. Give them credit from the microphone that they help the people by doing this, you know.
And I want to say, both of those examples that you gave just there, those are examples that, and this the reason why I bring this up is because some of the people who attend our classes are kind of isolated. They don't really have a cadre with them. These are examples that can be taken, that can be done by individuals. So, because a lot of people who take this class, they say, okay, well, how can you guys help us? We don't really have anybody around us. Well, there are 1.5 million different examples of things that an individual can do to further this, and as a result, can get you cadre members in the future.
It's edited by David Hilliard and Donna Wise. I'm reading something that Huey wrote back in June 5th, 1971, called Black Capitalism Reanalyzed. One thing he's talking about right here, a lot of people already know this. The Black Panther Party had a lot of survival programs in the community that met the community needs. Like he was talking about the free breakfast program for children. They had clothing programs. They had free health clinics. They had like busing people out to see their people that was locked up in prison. They was opening clothing factories, shoe factories, and stuff like that. This was a way to empower, not only meet the needs of the community, but to empower the community, where the community could learn how to become self-sufficient, where you can rely on the community, build institutions to empower the community in ways where the government was neglected in a lot of ways. You know what I'm saying? And I think one of the other positive things that came from these survival programs, it teaches the community how to control your own community. When people talk about socialism, a lot of people like, how do you get to socialism? But one way you get there is like the Black Panther Party always said, the best way to teach the people is through observation and participation. So when people start to take over institutions in the community and are able to control those institutions for the needs of the people, you're teaching the people socialism right there. So they're learning it on a local level. So in time, as we develop this and this becomes a mass-based thing with throughout every community in the country, this would teach people how to govern themselves without the state being there as the mediator. You know what I'm saying? And in time, when we do fight for political power and when we do transition to that other part of that revolutionary process, people already have the knowledge to how to govern themselves from the local levels, and those same skills they can take to the state and national levels in order to govern the people to govern themselves. So I think this is one of the good things that the Black Panther Party brought to us back in the days that we can still learn from today. But anyway, I'm about to go back to read this. Again, this is the Huey P. Newton reader. I'm reading something he wrote June 5th, 1971. It's called Black Capitalism Reanalyzed. So to continue, he said, when the Black Panther Party defected from okay. No, we are. All right, however, okay. Okay, here we go. In the past, the Black Panther Party took a counter-revolutionary position. I'm going back just a little bit. With our blanket condemnation of Black capitalism, our strategy should have been to analyze the positive and negative qualities of this phenomenon before making any condemnation. Even though we recognize, and correctly so, that capitalism is no solution or answer, we did not make a truly dialectical analysis of the situation. We recognize that in order to bring the people to the level of consciousness where they would seize the time, it would be necessary to serve their interests in survival by developing programs which would help them to meet their daily needs. For a long time, we had such programs not only for survival, but for organizational purposes. Okay. Yeah, I'm further ahead. I'm going to skip to where I left off. All these programs satisfy the deep needs of the community, but they are not solutions to our problem. This is why we call them survival programs, meaning survival pending revolution. We say the survival program of the Black Panther Party is like the survival kit of a sailor stranded on a raft. It's to sustain himself until he can get completely out of that situation. So the survival programs are not answers or solutions, but they will help us to organize the community around a true analysis and understanding of their situation. When consciousness and understanding is raised to a high level, then the community will seize the time and deliver themselves from the boot of their oppressors. All our survival programs are free. We have never charged the community to receive the things that they need from any of the programs, and we will not do so. We will not get caught up out of the embarrassing questions or paperwork that alienate the people. If they have a need, we will serve their needs and attempt to get them to understand the true reasons why they are in need in such an incredibly rich land. Think about this. I know a couple of years ago, before I got in, the U.S. economy was $14 trillion. You know, a lot more than it was in the 60s. You know what I mean? But it's more poverty now. Think about that. How is it this country a richer country now, but more poverty? That's a contradiction. And by developing these survival areas where we can build our own sufficiency up within our community and we don't have to rely on the government, this is a good way to educate the people that this system is the problem. This system is for poverty. This system is the cause for underemployment and unemployment. This system is the cause for disproportionate health care not being provided to lower class people, in particular black people, lower class people in general. You know, when the Black Panther Party was able to satisfy these needs, they see people as expendable and stuff. But the Black Panther Party, they don't have $14 trillion, was able to meet the needs of the people in their community. How is that so? You know, and this is action that we want to wage. This is part of the class struggle. Once we become self-sufficient, it makes the people question how and why was this government in a position where it wasn't doing this and it had way more resources to take care of the people's needs.
Now, this is a contradiction that we have to be able to show to people. One of the things that we have to do when we're educating people on the street, either through our practice or just through debate or just talk to them, is be able to show, this is just one example of a contradiction. There are many. But to be able to show people these different contradictions, get them to understand, right? But one of the ways, sorry guys, it's not having a word. Apologize. Anyway, one of the ways, okay, so, what was that? Okay, so we have to get people to understand these different contradictions, and one of the ways that we can get them to understand that is by them participating in our programs. How they ask yourself the question, okay, how does the government fund the free breakfast for children program? Right, it's quick now, right? It's not the same thing, but how their version? How do they fund it? Right. Well, they get tax dollars, you know, every year, and then they put that money into, you know, a particular office, welfare office, and then the welfare office sources, they give the funds to the different schools, and then the schools will source their food through whatever provider, you know. Well, okay, how do we do that? Well, we go to local stores, and you know, we find we go whole hill and source it directly from farms. We grow the food ourselves, right? And this is a means of empowerment and politics that goes beyond the level of most people's consciousness in this country, right? And they see that there's this contradiction here that, hey, the government is providing this program and it's way more costly than it would, even for the local school, way more costly than it is for us. We can give the same level of nutrition, the same amount of food, and feed the same amount of kids for cheaper. And so this is only through participating in the free breakfast for children program does somebody understand that contradiction. And we have to be able to get people to understand these things. Now, you can have a debate with somebody on the street, and they'll come to the position of understanding, hey, yeah, this obviously, you know, from the numbers you told me, But do they really understand until they're the one organizing it? I don't think they do. So you have to be able to highlight these contradictions for the people. We have to be able to show them, all the different facets of capitalism. And when we do that, they raise in consciousness of our level, and they want to organize things, and they want to overthrow a system that's so costly and devastating to human life.
Continue to go. In order to carry out such programs, we have always needed money. In the past, we received money from wealthy white philanthropists, humanitarians, and heirs to their monopolies. At the same time, we were engaging in a blatant condemnation of small, victimized black capitalists found in our communities. This tactic was wrong since we received our survival program from big white capitalists, and we freely admit that. When we say that we black capitalism, the seeds of its own negation and the negation of all capitalism, we recognize that the small black capitalists in our community, the potential to contribute to the building of the machine, which will serve the true interests of people and end all exploitation. By positive qualities of the black capitalists, we may be able to bring about the non-antagonistic solution of this contradiction within our community, while at the same time heightening the oppressed community's contradiction with the large corporate capitalist empire. This will intensify the antagonistic contradiction between the oppressed communities and the empire. By heightening that contradiction, there will subsequently be a violent transformation of the corporate empire. We will do this through our survival programs, which have the interest of the community at heart. The ones that's just tuning in again, I'm reading the Huey P. Newton Reader, and this is edited by David Hilliard and Donald Wise. This is something that Huey wrote back in June 5th, 1971. It's called Black Capitalism Reanalyzed, the first one. He said, we now see that black capitalism is having a similar relationship to the black community as the national, in parentheses, bourgeoisie, people in national wars of decolonialization. In wars of decolonialization, the national bourgeoisie supports the freedom struggle of the people because they recognize that it is in their own selfish interest. Then when the foreign exploiter has been kicked out, the national bourgeoisie takes its place and continues the exploitation. However, the national bourgeoisie is a weaker group, even though they are exploiters. What Huey is getting at here, in a lot of countries over in, let's say in Africa, just to use this one example, but we can talk about South America, Asia, over there in the Middle East as well. In a lot of the countries over there, like for instance in Algeria, South Africa, they were oppressed in Algeria, particularly by the French. The French was actually ran the governments, control all the institutions. That was the direct form of colonialization. And Arab people in Algeria that had some resources, that might have had small businesses or whatnot, they were also being oppressed by those French colonizers, because at the end of the day, they controlled the businesses and the wealth, the resources, and the institutions over in Algeria at the time, for instance. So because they were being oppressed, they also wanted to free themselves from the French colonial colonies. So by working with some of them in some of these countries, they were able to help build up the national liberation movement to free themselves from colonialism, direct colonialism from the French, from the Italians, from the Dutch, from the Spanish, from the Portuguese. You know what I mean? Because it was in their interest to get rid of colonialism in the country. For them, a lot of their self-interest is because they wanted to come their power themselves and become the new exploiters. So they would join forces with the lower class liberation movements in order to free themselves from the direct colonialization from the French, the Portuguese, or whatever who was dominating those countries and stuff. Well, Huey P. Newton is getting to this point right here. In this country, we have that same relationship. We are under a form of colonialization. We call it neo-colonialization in a lot of ways for us. You know what I mean? By joining forces with some of these small black businesses that are oppressed by these white monopolists, corporations and stuff. And a lot of them will even take over some of the ones that's gaining power and starting to become big. Once situations like Great Depressions, this recent depression that we in now, that might be end up later on classified as a depression for a lot of people and stuff, right? A lot of businesses can't compete, so the bigger business can swallow them up. So because they're being oppressed by these big transnational corporations and stuff like that, it's in their interest to align themselves with the black community, with the local communities that them, because their survival is based on us going to their businesses and patroning their business for them to survive. And because we see that dialectical relationship, we see that we can lessen that contradiction between us and some of these small businesses. Some of these small businesses can start contributing to social programs, survivor programs, serve the people programs in our community that help develop programs to meet the needs. You dig what I'm saying? And this will also empower the people in the community. It will meet their needs, and it will also help the Vanguard Party, the Black Panthers. We start to, as a people across the country, start to develop these Panther chapters across the country. It would empower the Vanguard Party to play an even more political role and to help advance in the revolution of the Black Liberation Movement. So it is not necessarily an antagonistic contradiction with some of these Black-owned businesses, Spanish-owned businesses, or whatnot, if they realize that their survival rests upon us. We have to let them know that your survival rests upon us. We can make you drown, or we can help you succeed. But in order for you to succeed, you're going to have to reinvest in our community. All power to the people. All right.
So I just want to say, we're talking about contradictions here. So, an antagonistic contradiction is one that is solved through struggle, right? And a non-antagonistic contradiction is one that is solved through debate or, otherwise some kind of work or something between two forces. So, this written here is to say that, like, when the Black Panthers first came on the scene, they vilified the local black capitalists, and when they did that, they created the conditions where those black capitalists would never support them. In order for them to support them, they would have had to have come to arms. One would have had to have been defeated. One force would have had to have defeated the other. What was corrected with their analysis was to say that, like, hey, we don't need to fight these people. These people, they depend on us for their survival. So in that analysis, they don't depend on the corporate monopoly capitalists for survival. Those are the people who want to they're in antagonistic contradiction with each other, right? So if their survival depends on us, there's no need for us to heighten that contradiction into antagonism. We can work with them, right, in a relationship to further our cause, because later on down the road, their support will be one of the backbones. It'll be one of the strongest lines of income and resources and all these things for our movement, because they want to become those big capitalists. And it's very possible that through our work together, they will see, at least some of them, the coming obsolescence of the enterprise at all, right? Or the private enterprise. So they may, in turn, begin to create cooperatives out of their enterprises when the conditions are ripe for it. Once we get to the point where we're in a revolution, even after. So So it's about determining the fact that we both have a common enemy, a common class enemy. And in that analysis, we see that it is mutually beneficial for us to work with them.
With that said, we now see that black capitalists have a similar. Okay, all right, I'm going down a little bit further. Since the people see black capitalism in the community as black control of local institutions, this is a positive characteristic because the people can bring more direction and focus to the activities of the capitalists. At the same time, the black capitalist who has the interests of the community at heart will respond to the needs of the people because this is where their true strength lies. So far as capitalism in general is concerned, the black capitalist has the status of victim because the big white capitalists have the skills, make the loans, and in fact control the black capitalists. This is the contradiction that we can heighten between the small capitalists in our community with the transnational corporations that even oppress them. We can use this contradiction to aid the black liberation movement in our in the people's favor. If he wants to succeed in this enterprise, the black capitalist must turn black community because he depends on them to make his profits. He needs this strong community support because he cannot become independent of the control of the corporate capitalists who control the large monopolies. Dewey was very smart. Being a dialectical materialist, seeing contradictions, turning intacit contradictions into non-antagonistic contradictions is important in order to form alliances with and temporary alliances with with institutions and people in the community to be able to be aligned with our struggle and stuff. Like some of the institutions of colleges and stuff like this, the professors, what we call the petty bourgeoisie. We can have alliances with them because they can bring about help with the theoretical aspect. You know what I'm saying? They can help us in these institutions, in these schools, and so this I'm expanding it by going off in that, and I don't want to go too far in a direct like that, but this is showing how you can turn something that is antagonistic into a non-antagonistic contradiction. This is something we start doing across the country now in order to build up these survival programs, serve the people programs, and around the country. And you got to do this on a local level. You got to be out here talking to these small businesses. You know what I'm saying? Getting them on board. You know what I mean? The ones that don't get on board, we don't patronize you. We don't support you. Yeah, eventually you're gonna get swallowed up because you don't have the support of the community no more. But this is one way that we can start to build serve the people programs in our communities. And this is what Huey P. Newton is letting us know. So the ones that's just jumping on here, I'm the Huey P. Newton Reader. This by edited by David Hilliard and Donna Wise. So I'm gonna continue. I only got a little bit left. Says the black capitalists will be able to support the people by contributing to the survival programs of the Black Panther Party. In contributing to such programs, he will be able to help build the vehicle that will eventually liberate the black community. He will not be able to deliver the people from their problems, and that's key. I'm going to say this one more time. He will not be able to deliver the people from their problems, but he will be able to build a strong political machine which will serve as a revolutionary vanguard and a guide the people in their moves towards freedom. So this is part of that alliance. Agree? I see you on there. Honor to the people. Our reanalysis of black capitalism and its relationship to the community from the perspective of dialectical and our practical understanding of the needs of the community and attitudes of the people towards black capitalism leads us to a new position. Black businesses and the interests of the community at heart will be able to contribute to the people throughout the community programs of the Black Panther Party. These free programs will help the community survive and thus deter the genocide, which is always a threat to our existence here. So I know you just came on brief. So I'm going to let you know we reading the Huey P. Newton Reader and this is by David Hilliard and Donald Wise. I'm reading something that P. Newton wrote June 5th, 1971. It's called Black Capitalism Lies. This is how we can use those black capitalists in our community to actually support black liberation. So he says this, to keep on going. I'm almost done. I'll send you a link to this so you can see the whole thing. In return for these contributions, the Black Panther Party will carry advertisements of these businesses in our paper and urge the community to them. We will never sell advertising space in the paper. We will give space in return for contributions to the survival program, given free to the community. In this way, we will achieve a greater unity of the community of victims, the people who are victimized by the society in general, and the black capitalists who are victimized by the corporate capitalist monopolies. And the positive qualities of black capitalism until they dominate the negative qualities. And exploitation will no longer be reality which the community reluctantly accepts. The community will see those who support their survival and patronize their businesses. At the same time, the community will also criticize who refuse to participate in survival program and turn their backs on them. If the establishment tries to come down hard on those businessmen who support the survival programs, then the community will recognize this as another form of oppression and will move to strongly their supporters. And that way, the consciousness of the people, the level of struggle will be advanced. There is no salvation capitalism. But through this new, the black capitalist will contribute to its own negation by helping to build a strong political vehicle which is guided by revolutionary concepts and serve as a vanguard for the people. In a way, our new position has the simplicity and completeness of a mathematical formula. When the black capitalist contributes to the survival program, makes a contribution to the community will give him their support and thus strengthen his business. If he does not make any contribution to the survival community, the people will not support him, and his enterprise will wither away because of his own negligence. By supporting the community, he will be helping to build the political machine that will eventually negate his own exploitation of the community, also negate his being exploited and victimized by corporate capitalism. So we will heighten the contradiction between black community and corporate capitalism, while at the same time reducing the contradiction between black capitalists and the black community. In this way, capitalism will be transformed from a relationship of exploitation of the community to a relationship of service to the community, which will contribute to the survival of everyone. With that said, all power to the people, Huey. So, summarize what I said. This right here, what Huey P. Newton was talking about, the Huey P. Newton reader. If you don't have this book, this is a book to understand what the original Black Panther Party.
All right, so we're going to open this up to a discussion on Huey P. Newton reader, specifically the section about black capitalism. So, anything that you would like to point questions, things like that. I see Tom is falling asleep, but so anyway, the floor is open. Anything that you'd like to discuss? Okay, Alan.
I actually liked it, and I like how that went back and reanalyzed, not being antagonistic entirely, because again, they did the dialectics and they see, that black businesses have a purpose. It's a form of funding, can be a form of the community out as a whole, especially help fund them to be able to do the breakfast program and all the other programs that they were doing. I do see as myself a small business owner myself that I want to use my funds, when I get out, the first year or whatever, be able to use funds to actually help the party and also help him as well. So I do see that, that's something that I should do, and I plan on doing that anyways, and as well as help fund me to go back home, help my people back home as well. Like how they critique the businesses that didn't participate, as a way of like showing that they're not helping, they're only out for themselves, and that individual, um, looking at it, only trying to aspire to be a bigger capitalist, someone that isn't helping. So that's kind of what I got from that, and I kind of felt like, yeah, that's something I plan on doing anyway. So yeah.
Anything else on this subject? And anybody can feel free to chime in. It's okay. We got any other further analysis here? Okay, so we're going to talk about mass-based organizations. So there is a separation here that I have to stress between party, vanguard parties, and the mass-based organization. Okay, so an example of a mass-based organization. Okay, Seamstresses for Liberty. Okay, what? And I'm gonna ask you all the question: what kind of person or people does that invoke? Without any further context. And anybody can chime in. Okay. So nobody's going to chime in. I would say that, in my mind, Seamstresses for Liberty, that sounds kind of like a libertarian organization. It sounds like, hey, we got, women who are seamstresses, right? They've banded together and they made this kind of, semi-patriotic kind of organization, right? Probably, if you had to guess what kind of literature these men were reading, they're reading like papers or the Constitution or something like that. Nope. Turns out these women are communists, socialists, or they maybe that. Maybe they just do things that are like, hey, this is socialism. We're like giving free clothes to children. Like, you see what I mean? But they're not going to say that. It's a front organization. Okay. Not all of those organizations in a mass-based movement are necessarily front organizations. Some of them might be, I don't know, let's say liberals for radical justice, right? Now, these are liberals who obviously see that there is a racial disparity in their community, right? That the police are they're, they're so what We understand that phenomena now. We understand that organization. We see how it's functioning and how it's working, right? Okay, well, now that we understand it, how can we have that organization in tandem with other organizations work towards some goal, right? So we have the understanding of the phenomena, and we have the utilization of that phenomena. That's why it's important to have mass-based organizations. Mass-based organization, it gets you deeper into the community than if we were just trying to get every single person into a vanguard party. They're not going to be advanced as on average, right? As a vanguard, your vanguard is going to understand Das Kampf. They're going to know some of them. Even will be able to recite to you. What does it say on page 32 of volume 1? They'll be able to recite that page to you, right? Some of them will. Now you try to do that to somebody just off the street, pick a random person, or even a random person in an organization that isn't the vanguard party. That's not going to happen. They're not going to be able to even, these people may not even know what Das Capital is. So we have to be able to, we're not trying to organize every single person into a vanguard party. We have to be able to make deeper connections, more strategic connections in our communities. We have to make local community garden with the local business guy who work, and they all both work with the seamstresses, and the seamstresses work with, you see what I'm saying? That's your organization. It's what gives you the resources you need as to put forward, party sponsored programs, right? If we wanted to feed 500 kids a week, but we didn't have a mass-based organization, you have a hell of a lot more work to do. And it may even be impossible. So this is why this mass-based vehicle was developed as a concept, and the same model applies almost universally across the world. Every country has this, and it's a great means of providing things for people. And so, with the new African Black Panther Party specifically, organizations in the UPM, they don't need to be communist. They as long as they accept the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party, of the New African Black Panther Party, and it's a white organization of the White Panther Party and the New African Black Panther Party at the same time, they're viable. They can work in the UPM. Fundamentalists. They could be. I could go on and on. They could be any political orientation. I mean, obviously, somebody who's antithetical to the 10-point program, say a neo-Nazi organization, they're not going to be able to do that. They're not even going to be able to agree on the program. So it's limited in that sphere. But you got everybody from left of center to far left who can fall into the UPM, and then that gives us the broad brush, the broad, deep roots into the community that we need to get the small brush programs to these kinds of things. So we're running a little bit. We have I would say about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to open this up for discussion, and preferably on mass-based organizations, questions, these kinds of things, and then or you can just talk about whatever, But after that, we're going to wrap up. So, questions, analysis on mass-based organizations. The floor is open.
I got something right there. You hear me?
How's it going?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm doing this time, so I'm almost scatterbrained, but I just wanted to try. I think that there's a connection. I mean, kind of odd connection to me, but it's with the what he was talking about, with taking the positive from building with black capitalists within the communities, how that's going to heighten contradictions as when they're going to be exploited by the big white corporations, and at the same time, be stuck in between the needs of the community. They're going to be pushed in a direction, basically end up having to, you know, it's going to put it in a position in which where it's not necessarily pick sides, where it's going to show. Well, yeah, it's going to be pick sides because the black community's needs are going to come first, and everything is coming from. So I think what I want to connection with is in the same thing. If we look at the contradictions, the like primary contradictions, so to speak, like imperialism versus the most exploited throughout the world, right? And whatever we choose to build a mass base with, how does that what we are who we're building with going to those contradictions and where it's going to go in our favor. So if it's with, let's say, a prisoner program, how is building with inmates going to contradict or go up against imperialism, or how is it that when it comes to I'm getting a phone call. That's what my thoughts is considered. But anyway, yeah. So whatever we're doing, how is it going to work in our and go against them? So, and I think that's where the analysis comes in, where it's like, if building within the prison and building the prison program is going to either heighten class consciousness or stop the recidivism, or if it's going to serve the interests of people in general, and which is going to prevent people from going back to prison or whatever. What that does is stop the prison industrial complex, wars, or whatever the case may be. The little things that we're going to do is chip it away at this structure, and strengthen it in our structure, communities. And I think that's where whatever we decide to lock arms with is going to be, that's the question. You ask that shit, like, if we go and crash this movement, like, what does that do for the favor of us? Nothing. It actually destroys what we have going on, and it's working against us. So I just wanted to just throw that out for discussion as a way of like trying to look at it with what it does for the movement in general. Sorry, I'm scattered right now, but that's just what I wanted to say. All right.
Okay. All right. So we got Alan.
I don't think there's a question in the chat, but to Rob's question about how the capitalists, how we work with the black capitalists, is like if we start teaching about the unionize all labor within the black companies and stuff like that, and also co-opting, teaching them co-ops with that, and that will further have the divide, or at least keep it in a way where that can slow down or start to smash the capitalistic aspect of it. Like I said myself, I'm a small entrepreneur. I believe in it. I have employees, which I just unionize myself. Like, screw it, I get. I teach them all about stuff like that. Well, one is my niece, and I teach her a lot of stuff about things that she'll know. But just in general, when we go on the street and we talk to small business owners and stuff like that, we try to tell them about unionizing their work, unionizing their labor and everything, and that can be a catalyst into that not being such a contradiction of working with black capitalism, and also to with other people. I also work in the Texas Organized Project. They have a chapter in Dallas. They have a chapter here in Houston. They have a chapter here in San Antonio, and of course the party works within that organization, and we sort of organization, but at the same time we work with them because they're basically linked. So we try to work with them on stuff, on progressive issues such as bail reform, misdemeanor bail reform, felony bail reform, and stuff like that. And we don't compromise a lot. At least our members don't compromise stuff like talking to the police and stuff like that. When they want to talk to the police stuff, but we will join in if they go to like City Hall and we'll ask our questions. We'll put forth progressive ideas to keep the issues going, at least here in Texas. So we can work with it, but we also know the contradictions because it's based out of the Democratic Party. That of course a lot of it is like corporate, stuff like that. So that's what I want to say on that. But yeah, there is a question in the chat.
Yeah, and I'll answer that question in a moment here. One of the laws of capitalism is the capitalists have to prioritize their profit. They have to increase their profit in order for business to survive. So you get a fight over resources like that so that you can maximize it. Well, one of the things that happens when we get these local black capitalists, and this doesn't have to be black community, there could be white community too. It's any community. The local petty bourgeoisie really is what we're talking about here. When you get them, and their survival necessarily on providing resources to not just your mass base, but your survival programs in general, that law starts to become right, and so they have to focus less on maximizing their profit and more on meeting the needs of their community. And in this way, they begin to negate their own existence, as David Hilliard. What was the other guy? I forgot his name. As was written. And since stand in opposition to, but it's not always open opposition, but since their fight is against the bourgeoisie, the monopoly capitalists, they're more prone to falling into that position. Monopoly capitalists, their success does not depend upon your specific local community. Walmart is not going to dissolve as a result of the black community in your neighborhood not going to their store, and so they don't ever have this pressure on them to support the community. That is not true with the petty bourgeoisie. So I'm going to get to Comrade Chris here. He asked, can that hurt the cause? Can different organizations coexist to help meet the needs of others? Yeah. So the mass-based organization, I don't think that can. The reason why I say that is because if everybody in your mass-based organization is following the same program, all their goals are aligned and they're organized towards solving that problem directly and all these things. It really doesn't matter all that much what their ideology is at that point. Later on, those struggles become more important. Because during a revolution, and we can analyze Russia, it's a great example. There's many different factions fighting for control, right? But that is a period where the contradictions have been sufficiently for a revolution. We're trying to build people's power, trying to get people to have organizations in a revolution at all. The organizations, the mass-based organization, they don't need to necessarily need to even support a revolution. They just need to be working towards the goal of, like, say, beating people or setting up a people's institution, right? They're headed in that direction even if they don't support it. now coexist to help meet the needs of others. Yeah. Now I will say that you can get into ego and interpersonal rivalry on the local level. This can happen where one organization might be dogmatic in some regard, and they might not work with, say, radical liberals or something like that. Even though they both agree on whatever your programmatic, whatever your program is, that's something that has to be organized around. You have to try to lessen the contradictions between certain organizations in that way. So it just depends on how the mass-based organization is structured. In what way does one organization relate to another through resources, finances, through just how they organize on the street together? And there are ways to rectify disputes and things like that. So it can be hard to get, like if you have a Christian organization, if they're dogmatic in one way about Bible, it might be hard to get them to unify with, a Muslim organization, even if that organization isn't dogmatic about whatever it is, even though they both agree programmatically. So it just depends on what the program is. For us, it's the 10-point program, and how those organizations relate to each other, how that's structured.
Well, I'll give you some concrete examples. There are a number of Muslim businesses that, as part of their business, do programs for the poor and the homeless and so forth. But the Jewish people call it a mitzvah. I'm not sure what the word they use in the Islamic community, but like there are Muslim-owned restaurants that do food programs for the homeless in their community. That's something we can unite with and help assist them, with volunteers who are not necessarily Muslim, but people that work on the homeless issue can help them with their program, them to help us with our programs. The same with churches, things like that. They don't necessarily have to agree with our goal of revolution, but agree with us on, the poor need food, or the prisoner needs programs like visitation of the prisoners is something that Jesus talked about as a Christian duty. And I'm sure that example I gave in Auburn prison, that the people that staff that program maybe doing it out of a Christian belief or Islamic beliefs or whatever, that don't necessarily give the goal of the party of revolution.
I think the main thing we were trying to highlight is like say you have like a web of different organizations that makes up your mass base. Well, each organization has a different relationship with one another in some way, working towards some point on the 10-point program. So, for example, if it's a food program, the Christian organization and the Muslim organization, they might both agree that we have to feed the people, but one of those organizations might be dogmatically against one of the other ones. So ways that you could remedy this organizationally is like say, okay, this week the Christians will staff the table, next week the Muslims will staff the table. But both of them will still contribute the resources that they get from that program. So it's just to see where the disputes are. You can still build a mass-based organization with organizations that are opposed to one another, but in agreement on a program, a common program. And, ideally, through this work, we can find ways to remedy the contradiction between organizations. And that should be the goal, so that each organization within the mass base is willing to actually do work on the ground together. We have to find ways to bridge that gap. So, there's a local history with all of those different localities. I can give you a handful of organizers near me who refuse to work with organizers also nearby for one or another reason. Right? If we had we were all working toward common goals, there would be a lot of ways and a lot of opportunities to remedy that divide. Do we have any more comments or questions on the mass base? Some of my socialist comrades back home in Flint are atheists, but teamed up their food, not bomb setup with Asbury Methodist Church to build an entire farm to do this food giveaway every Saturday at the church. Exactly. We don't want to be. We want to include as many organizations as we can in our mass base, as long as they're in unison with our program. Even organizations that don't want to work with one another, because we can find ways to bridge that gap, and we can find ways for organizations to contribute to that program, even if they don't want to work together necessarily. Yeah, the church is fully aware they're atheists and welcome them with open arms because they share the goal of feeding the community.
Yeah, I used to, when I was the leader of the Red Heart Warrior Society, and that grew out of the Native American circles in the prison, and a lot of times you have to have a chaplain to start having a religious meeting. So very often we would get the Islamic imam to sit in as the chaplain when we were doing Native American spiritual programs, even though they have their own Islamic beliefs. They would sit there and say, when people were doing a sweat lodge or a pipe ceremony or something like that, because they united as third world people, and they knew the persecution that they dealt with as much. We're happy to help people with different religious beliefs to be able to get around the prison rules and bureaucracy. God code, we often had to fight against some of the ultra-rightist Christian chaplains who considered what we were doing devil worship, and they would try to ban the program. We would, find support with the Muslim program, or even in one case, a rabbi I would act as the sponsoring chaplain.
So, and the other thing, and this is the last thing I have to say on this, and it also depends on the 10-point program, right? Certain aspects of that program are going to be principled. They're going to be problems in specific communities. So, if it's food, if you live in a food desert, and you start trying to organize a mass base toward let's say, I don't know, housing. Housing isn't as big of a problem as food is. You're going to get less organizations on board with your NAS base. And certain organizations that might have a dispute between them will be less likely to remedy that, well, less likely to remedy the problem themselves as a result of that. So you want to find a principal issue in the community, and then through that, through multiple organizations seeing, hey, and even ones that are, opposed to each other, saying, hey, this is the biggest problem, they'll be more likely for you to be able to remedy the problems between those two organizations. Otherwise, you'll have a smaller mass base, and not everybody will necessarily want to put their energy toward that, whatever that problem is, even if they all agree with, say, the 10 program. One of them, or multiple, will say, hey, there's actually this deeper analysis. We have a bigger problem here. We need to target this one. We shouldn't target this other one. So making sure that you're strategic about how your organizations are working together is important. Also, being a problem you want to tackle first is also really important. So we're kind of at the end of the hour here, so we're going to wrap up for today. Next class is Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central to 4 p.m. Eastern. And then the next UPM class is Saturday at same time, 3 p.m., 4 p.m. All power, guys.
All power.
All power.
There we go. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As Chairman Jake just said, we'll be back on Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern Time with the reading group. And next weekend, we'll be back on schedule with doing the next segment of this class, Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern. So in the meantime, much love, all power, and we'll see you guys soon. Actually, tune in tonight, too, because at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, a little over an hour from now, Rob and I will be doing the current event stream since we had to postpone that on Friday. So tune in tonight, too. We'll see you then. Go. All right, enjoy the tunes.
Didn't matter when they sold the devil guns. Didn't matter when they played us drugs. Didn't matter when they stole your mother's sons. Now everyone's out of their mind. Bullshit, these unemployment lines don't know the casualties of the corporate crimes. To the color of a little one is no peace of mind. The only one that matters is the one who's more better than your grandkids here to enjoy. When you watch them, their reaction to every little inconvenience soul. Still a public, is metamorphosis, threat to the status quo.
Reflections. We don't make mistakes. We have FBX also. Just don't worry about it. Learn how to use what